The M62 motorway stretched endlessly under the Yorkshire night sky, its tarmac glistening with November rain. Oswin Tranter gripped the steering wheel of his 1998 DAF CF, the engine's familiar rumble, a comforting companion after 23 years together. At 58, he knew every sound his lorry made, the slight wheeze when climbing hills, the satisfying purr when cruising at 70 on the flats. "Come on, old girl," he murmured, patting the dashboard worn smooth by decades of his calloused hands. "Just one more delivery to Leeds, then we'll head home to see our Jamie." His son had graduated from Manchester University 3 months ago, first in the family to earn a degree, engineering with honours. Oswin's chest swelled with pride every time he thought about it. All those years of scrimping, saving every penny from his haulage jobs, eating cold sandwiches in lay-bys instead of proper meals at service stations. It had all been worth it. The load behind him, 40 pallets of electronics bound for a warehouse in Seacroft, represented his biggest contract in months. Independent truckers like Oswin were a dying breed, squeezed out by the big logistics companies with their fleets of newer vehicles and corporate contracts. But he'd survived this long by being reliable, honest, and never missing a delivery deadline. As he passed Junction 29, the first wisps of smoke began curling around the edges of his wing mirrors. "What the hell?" Oswin frowned, checking his gauges. Oil pressure fine, temperature normal, no warning lights, but the smoke was thickening and now he could smell it. Acrid, electrical, wrong. He had perhaps 30 seconds to react. Training kicked in as he spotted the upcoming services at Woolly Edge. Indicating left, he wrestled the increasingly sluggish lorry off the motorway, smoke now billowing from beneath the cab. Other drivers were flashing their lights, honking horns in warning. In the services car park, Oswin threw himself from the cab, just as the first flames licked through the engine bay. He fumbled for his mobile, dialing 999 with shaking fingers while backing away from his beloved DAF. "Fire service, please. My lorry's ablaze at Woolly Edge Services. Registration Yankee November 03 ZDF. The operator's calm professionalism contrasted sharply with Oswin's rising panic. This wasn't just a vehicle. It was his livelihood, his home away from home, his future. He'd been meaning to upgrade the insurance, but money had been tight with Jamie's university costs. The fire brigade arrived within 12 minutes, but it was far too late. By the time they'd doused the flames, nothing remained but a twisted, blackened skeleton. The electronics cargo was a total loss. The company would claim on their insurance, but Oswin's DAF, uninsured against fire due to its age, was gone forever. "Sorry, mate," said the fire chief, a weathered Yorkshireman with kind eyes. "Electrical fault by the looks of it. These older vehicles, the wiring gets brittle. One spark in the wrong place." Oswin nodded numbly, unable to speak. Behind the burnt-out wreckage, early morning commuters were already streaming into the services, life carrying on as if his world hadn't just ended. His mobile rang. Jamie's number. "Dad, I saw the news. Are you okay? They said a lorry caught fire." "I'm fine, son." Oswin's voice cracked despite his efforts. "Just a bit of trouble with the truck." "Dad, tell me the truth. Was it yours?" The silence stretched between them, filled with everything Oswin couldn't say. "How do you tell your son, the first university graduate in 3 generations of Tranters, that you've lost everything, that the modest house in Rotherham would have to be sold to pay debts, that at 58 you're too old to get hired by the big firms and too broke to buy another truck?" "Dad?" "Aye, lad, it was mine." The breakdown truck arrived an hour later, winching the charred remains onto its bed. As it pulled away with 23 years of Oswin's working life, he stood alone in the car park with nothing but the clothes on his back and 67 severs in his wallet. A service station worker approached. A young lad, maybe Jamie's age. "You all right, mate? Heard what happened? Rough break." Oswin managed a weak smile. "Been better, to be honest." "Listen, I'm not supposed to, but..." The lad glanced around nervously. "My supervisor's gone for his break. There's a shower block round the back staff use. Got some spare overalls too if you want to clean up." It was a small kindness, but in that moment it felt enormous. Oswin's eyes welled up. "That's very good of you, son. Very good indeed." As he followed the young man around the building, Oswin caught his reflection in a shop window, soot-stained, exhausted, looking every one of his 58 years. This was rock bottom, but something in the lad's simple offer of help reminded him that not all was lost. Some fights were worth continuing, even when the odds seemed impossible. Especially then. 3 weeks later, Oswin stood in the queue at St. Augustine's Community Centre in Barnsley, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. The morning was bitter, frost coating the car windows in the nearby car park, where he'd spent another uncomfortable night in his borrowed Vauxhall Corsa, a favour from his neighbour that couldn't last much longer. The community center had become his lifeline. Hot meals twice a week, and on Saturdays they distributed food parcels to local families in need. Oswin had swallowed his pride and volunteered to help with the loading, telling himself it was better than simply taking charity. At least this way, he was earning his keep. "Right then, Oswin," called Margaret Thornfield, the center coordinator. "Need you on the loading bay again. Big delivery from the supermarket today." He nodded, grateful for the distraction. Physical work helped quiet the voice in his head that whispered he was finished, washed up, a failure who'd let his son down. The repetitive task of moving crates and boxes gave him purpose, however temporary. The loading bay was bustling with activity. Volunteers of all ages worked alongside those who'd come for assistance. The line between helper and helped often blurred in the tight-knit Yorkshire community. Oswin had learned not to judge by appearances. The smartly dressed woman might be a single mother struggling with bills, while the rough-looking bloke in work boots could be a contractor donating his Saturday to help others. As he lifted a crate of tinned goods, Oswin noticed a tall figure in a dark hooded top lingering near the edge of the activity. The man wasn't queuing for food or actively helping, just observing. Something about his stillness drew attention, despite his obvious attempt to remain unnoticed. "Excuse me, mate," the stranger approached as Oswin set down the crate. "You've been here a while. Work here full-time, do you?" The accent was local, but refined, educated Yorkshire rather than the broader dialect Oswin was used to. The man kept his hood up despite being indoors, casting shadows across his features. "Volunteer," Oswin replied, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Just lending a hand where I can. Been coming long?" There was something in the question, not idle curiosity but genuine interest. Oswin found himself opening up to this stranger in a way he hadn't with anyone since the fire. 3 weeks now. Had a bit of a setback, you might say. Lost my lorry in a fire. 23 years I drove that old Daf. Now I'm between jobs, between homes, really. This place, well, it keeps you going, doesn't it? The hooded man nodded slowly. "What kind of work did you do?" "Haulage, independent operator. Took whatever jobs I could get, building supplies to Glasgow, furniture to Newcastle, anything that needed moving. Wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Kept me and my lad going." "Your lad?" "Jamie. Just graduated university. Manchester engineering degree with honours. First in our family to get that far." Pride crept into Oswin's voice, despite his circumstances. "Clever as anything, that boy. Looking for work now, but you know how it is for graduates these days." The stranger was quiet for a long moment, watching Oswin stack another crate with practiced efficiency. "Must have been hard losing the truck. Your livelihood gone just like that. Insurance didn't cover it. Old vehicle, you see. I kept meaning to upgrade the policy, but..." Oswin shrugged. Always something else needing the money. Jamie's education came first. "So what's next for you?" It was the question Oswin had been avoiding. At 58, without a vehicle, his options were limited. The big logistics companies wanted younger drivers with clean HGV licenses and their own trucks. The few jobs available for employed drivers went to men half his age. Don't know, if I'm honest. Been applying for anything. Warehouse work, delivery driver, whatever I can find. Not many takers for a trucker without a truck. The stranger studied him with an intensity that made Oswin slightly uncomfortable. Then, unexpectedly, the man smiled, the first genuine expression Oswin had seen from him. "You know what I notice about you," the stranger said. "You lost everything, but you're still here, still helping, still putting your boy first. You didn't give up, and you didn't get bitter. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Before Oswin could respond, the man continued. "You keep your chin up, mate. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places." "Margaret," the stranger called to the coordinator. "This man here, Oswin, he's one of your best volunteers, isn't he?" Margaret beamed. "Oh, absolutely. Oswin's been a godsend, always first to arrive, last to leave. Never complains, just gets on with it. We could use a dozen more like him." The hooded man nodded as if this confirmed something important. He turned back to Oswin, extending his hand. "Been a pleasure talking with you. Take care of yourself." The handshake was firm, brief. As the stranger walked away, Oswin called after him. "Sorry, didn't catch your name." The man paused at the door, turning back with that same enigmatic smile. "Don't worry about that. You'll remember this conversation, though. Trust me on that." As the door closed behind the mysterious visitor, Margaret appeared at Oswin's shoulder. "Friend of yours?" "Never met him before in my life," Oswin replied, still staring at the door. Odd bloke, but seemed decent enough. What Oswin didn't notice was the expensive Range Rover that pulled away from the car park moments later, or the fact that its driver spent the entire journey home making phone calls that would change everything. The knock on the door came at 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, sharp and confident. Oswin had been awake for hours anyway, unable to sleep properly in the cramped confines of the Corsa. He'd parked outside his old house in Rotherham, sold 3 weeks earlier to cover debts, and was trying to summon the energy for another day of job hunting. His first thought was that it might be the new owners complaining about him sleeping rough on their street. But when he opened the door of his temporary accommodation, his sister's spare room, where he'd been staying for the past few days, the sight that greeted him defied all logic. A gleaming Daf CF truck sat on the narrow residential street, its red and blue livery pristine in the morning light. Along the side, in elegant gold lettering, were the words Oswin Tranter Haulage, and standing beside it, no longer hiding beneath a hood, was Tyson Fury. "Bloody hell," Oswin whispered, his hand gripping the doorframe for support. The heavyweight champion of the world stood on the doorstep, grinning like a schoolboy with a secret. At 6 feet 9 inches, he seemed to fill the entire frame, but his presence was warm rather than intimidating. "Morning, Oswin, remember me?" Tyson's voice carried that familiar mix of confidence and warmth that had made him beloved beyond the boxing world. For a moment, Oswin's brain simply refused to process what he was seeing. The man from the community centre, the quiet observer in the hooded top, was Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King himself, standing on a terraced street in Rotherham with a brand new lorry behind him. How did you—" Oswin stammered, his legs suddenly unsteady. "You're Tyson bloody Fury." "Last time I checked, Tyson chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mischief, "though my missus might disagree after I left the toilet seat up again yesterday. But what are you doing here? How did you find me?" "Easy, mate," Tyson said gently, reaching out to steady him as Oswin swayed slightly. "Why don't we sit down for a minute? You look like you've seen a ghost." Oswin's sister's neighbour, Mrs. Patterson, had appeared at her window, phone already out, recording. Her mouth was hanging open so wide you could have driven the daff through it. "Is that really him?" she called out. "Tyson Fury, on our street?" Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered, dog walkers abandoning their routes, curtains twitching, children appearing from nowhere with the supernatural ability they possessed when something exciting was happening. "That truck there," Tyson said, pointing to the daff with theatrical flair, "belongs to you now, fully yours. Registration, insurance, the lot. Tank's full, MOT's done. And I've had a word with Thompson's Logistics in Leeds. They've got a job waiting if you want it." Oswin felt his knees buckle. He sat heavily on the doorstep, staring at the truck that represented everything he'd lost and more. It wasn't just transportation, it was dignity, independence, hope. "This isn't real," he muttered, shaking his head. "I'm dreaming, or having some sort of breakdown. Want me to pinch you?" Tyson offered with a grin. "Fair warning, though, these hands are licensed weapons." "Why?" Oswin whispered, his voice breaking as the reality began to sink in. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Tyson crouched down beside him, his famous face suddenly serious. The crowd had grown larger, but he seemed oblivious to the dozens of phones now recording every word. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything, mate. Different circumstances, but the same feeling. When I was at my lowest, depression, drinking, career in tatters, people wrote me off, said I was finished, a has-been, a waste of space." His voice grew quieter, more personal. "I put on 3 stone, couldn't get out of bed some days. The world saw this big, tough boxer, but inside I was broken. Proper broken." "But you came back," Oswin said. "You're the champion of the world." "Aye, but not alone. A few good people believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. My wife Paris, my dad, some mates who wouldn't let me quit. That's what saved me, not the boxing, not the money. It was knowing someone still had faith." He gestured toward the growing crowd of onlookers, many now openly filming. "See, everyone knows about the comeback story, the championships, the money, the fame, but they don't know about the small kindnesses that got me through, the strangers who showed faith when I had none left." "Mrs. Patterson," Tyson suddenly called out to the neighbor, "this man here is a proper hero, you know that. Lost everything but still helping others. That's rarer than any heavyweight title." Mrs. Patterson beamed, as if she'd been personally blessed by royalty. "Oh, we know Oswin's a good one. Always helps with the shopping, cleared my gutters last winter without being asked." Oswin wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, not caring who saw. "I don't deserve this. I'm nobody special. Just a trucker who couldn't even keep his own business afloat." "Stop that right there." Tyson's voice carried a sharp edge. "At the community centre I watched you for 2 hours. Margaret told me you'd been coming for weeks. Always helping, never complaining. Lost everything, but still giving what you could." He paused, making sure Oswin was listening. When I asked about your situation, your first words weren't about yourself. They were about your lad, how proud you were of his degree. That tells me everything about your character. Jamie doesn't even know about all this. Oswin gestured vaguely at his reduced circumstances. Oh, but he does, Tyson said with a knowing smile. I might have tracked him down yesterday. Had a proper chat with your boy. You spoke to Jamie? Bright lad, that one. Works in engineering now, Rolls-Royce no less. Told me all about his old man, how you worked 3 jobs to pay for his education. Never complained, never made him feel guilty for the sacrifices. Oswin's eyes filled with fresh tears. He said that? Said a lot more than that. Called you the strongest man he's ever known. Said watching you help others when you had nothing left taught him more about being a man than any textbook ever could. Tyson stood, pulling a set of keys from his pocket. They were attached to a key ring with a small brass plate engraved with the words, "Still Standing." There's one condition, though, Tyson said, his tone mock-serious. When you're back on your feet properly, and you will be, you pay it forward. Help someone else who's lost their way. That's how this works. Chain of kindness, innit? Oswin took the keys with trembling hands. The metal was warm, real, impossible. I can't accept this, he said weakly. It's too much. The cost alone. The cost, Tyson laughed, a sound that filled the entire street. Mate, I spend more than this on suits I wear once. This truck, this is an investment in something that actually matters. Young Tommy from number 47 had worked his way to the front of the crowd. Mr. Fury, sir, can I get a selfie? Course you can, lad, but let's get Mr. Tranter here settled first, eh? Man's having the shock of his life. There's something else in the cab, Tyson added, turning back to Oswin. A little message from your boy. Inside the truck, which smelled of new leather and possibility, Oswin found an envelope propped against the steering wheel. Jamie's handwriting on the front, for the best dad in Yorkshire. Dad, Tyson tracked me down yesterday and told me what he was planning. I wanted you to know that I've never been ashamed of you, not for 1 second. Watching you help others even when you had nothing left, that taught me more than any university course ever could. I got the job at Rolls-Royce, by the way. Start next month in Derby. Good money, company car, the works. Your sacrifices paid off, Dad. Now it's my turn to look after you. But first, get back out there and show them what Oswin Tranter is made of. Love always, Jamie P.S. Check the glove compartment. Inside the glove compartment, Oswin found a small painted sign. Still here because someone believed I was worth the journey. When he emerged from the cab, wiping his eyes openly now, Tyson was already walking away toward a waiting Range Rover. The crowd parted respectfully as the champion headed toward his exit. Tyson, Oswin called out, his voice cracking. How can I ever repay you? This changes everything. The boxer turned back one last time, his smile visible even from a distance. Behind him, the crowd had swelled to nearly 50 people, all watching this extraordinary moment unfold on their ordinary street. You already did, mate, 3 weeks ago, when you showed me what real strength looks like. Champions aren't the ones who win belts. They're the ones who get back up when life knocks them down. But this truck, the job, everything, it's too much. Tyson shook his head. It's not enough if you ask me, but it's a start. Remember what I said about paying it forward. The world needs more people like you, Oswin Tranter, Mrs. Patterson shouted from her doorway. You're a proper gentleman, Mr. Fury. A credit to Yorkshire. That's kind of you, love, Tyson called back with a wave. But the real gentleman's standing next to that truck. Look after him for me, won't you? As the Range Rover disappeared around the corner, Oswin stood beside his new truck, surrounded by neighbors and strangers who'd witnessed something extraordinary. Young Tommy was already posting videos to his social media, and Mrs. Patterson was on the phone, undoubtedly spreading the news across the entire estate. Right then, Oswin, said Mr. Henderson from number 32, a retired mechanic. Let's have a proper look at this beauty. DAF CF, good choice, reliable as they come. I can't believe this is happening, Oswin said for the dozenth time, running his hands along the pristine paintwork. Believe it, mate, said Mrs. Patterson, approaching with a proper cup of tea. And drink this. You look like you could use it. As the crowd gradually dispersed, promising to spread the word about Oswin's good fortune, he found himself alone with his new truck for the first time. The keys felt heavy in his hand, not just metal but possibility, hope, redemption. He thought about Tyson's words, about paying it forward, about being worthy of such incredible generosity. The weight of responsibility was almost as overwhelming as the gift itself. 3 months later, Oswin Tranter was back on the roads full-time, his business growing steadily. True to his word, he'd started a small fund to help other drivers who'd fallen on hard times. The first recipient was a young Polish immigrant whose van had been stolen. leaving him unable to work. On the side of Oswin's Daf, beneath his name in gold letters, he'd added Tyson's words, "Still standing." Every mile he drove was a testament to the power of human kindness and the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to give up, no matter how dark the road becomes. Sometimes the greatest victories happen not in boxing rings or football stadiums, but on quiet residential streets where one human being chooses to lift up another. And sometimes that's all the championship that matters.